Good morning and welcome to The Daily 3,
with Michael and David.
where we write it down and make it happen.
Almost never.
Well, we usually write it down. I don't know so much about the make it happen part.
That's right. So, why don't we start? What were your daily three from yesterday?
Yeah, so my daily 3, I had 3. The first one was to batch edit some videos. I worked on that. I didn't finish that. One of the things I learned is that I need to be more specific. So I didn't really want to batch edit. I just called it that because I had been calling it for the last 3 days that I had been putting it off. What I really should have said is edit episode 3 or finish editing episode 3. So I learned the power of specificity. How do you say that word? Being specific.
I don't think you have to be specific about how you pronounce that word. The specificity, felicity.
Irony.
Yeah.
So, I didn't actually finish editing episode 3. And then this morning, I chose to be very specific instead of just saying batch edit, actually finish editing episode 3 and schedule to go live. So that's what I called that.
Wow.
And I did that this morning because I was so specific. So when I was looking at what do I have to do? I didn't just get sucked into the millions of tiny little things you can do when you're editing. I knew exactly this is what I'm going for. So then I was able to make decisions as to meet that goal rather than just vague, I'm going to edit stuff. So that was yesterday's. And I guess that was today's. That was also today's as well.
Nice job, man.
But then my other 2 from
Way to learn from it.
Thanks. Was schedule a dentist appointment, which I did.
Dental hygiene.
I know.
Good job.
So that was a easy one. It was a 15-minute phone call.
Wow.
You're like, wow, 15 minutes or more could save you cavities on your cavity insurance.
And dentures.
But yeah, if you're like, it doesn't take me that long to schedule it. I'm going to a new dental clinic, so there was some new patient stuff I had to do, so it took a little while, but wasn't that bad. It was kind of funny because I did it and I was like, I have been putting that off for a week. That's been on my daily 3 or something like that. I'm like, it was so easy. Why didn't I just do it the first day?
I've been putting mine off for 3 years, so good job.
All right, man. Thanks. Yeah. Anyway, and then my third one was to finish the framing in the basement bedroom and then also finish the rough-in electrical. And I did both of those.
Crushing it.
And I finished it by 1 in the afternoon. I was like, I don't know what to do with myself right now. I'm done.
So what'd you do with all that extra time?
Yeah, so with that extra time, basically what I did is I went and downloaded footage because I had already created 40 gigs worth of video. So I was like, well, I have no more space, so I need to go download this all onto my laptop and then my external hard drive. So I took a break and did that. While I was waiting for that to download, I did some more research on different types of insulation and a couple other things I got to figure out as far as what products I want to use in that.
Nice.
In that bedroom. And then, other than that, I just started working on kind of a bunch of small stuff, like moving materials around, things putting tools I don't need anymore away. Sort of cleaning up, staging, setting up for the next part of the process.
Well, you started on the Harry Potter closet under the stairs.
Yeah, I did. So I did some insulation down there and then started framing up the wall under that.
I looked in there. It looked good.
Yeah, thanks,
you had the foam. You were using the foam gun.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I
Nice.
was. I did that, sealed some stuff with that. And so those were my daily 3 from yesterday. It was a really good day. I got 2 out of 3 done.
That's pretty good.
And I was surprised because I have not been doing well as of late, as far as actually getting to where I hope to get to. So yesterday was good.
What about for today? What are your daily 3 for today?
Yeah, my daily 3 for today are, the first one was to finish editing and episode 3 and schedule it to go live. And it's done. I finished that first thing this morning.
Bam.
So that was kind of good. And then the other thing is to do some basically just admin work. There's a couple different things for I'm a co-owner, co-partner, however you want to say it, at a web design and marketing firm. And so basically,
We sound so official.
it does. It's not. It's three guys in a basement. Like, but I guess technically that's what we do. We're a ad thing.
Don't sell it short. Yeah.
Web design. That's what we do. So just basically going through and doing some administrative accounting stuff there, figuring out some financial things, and kind of like all that technical, logistical detail stuff you have to do to be a business. So, and I did that already this morning. So that one's already done. And it's still pretty early in the day. And then
What are you gonna do?
what am I going to do? Well, part of it is I don't have as much time in the work today as I did like yesterday. So because I'm hanging out with a friend this afternoon, and then I'm also going to work out. And then a buddy from my small group had a tree in his backyard fall in the storm yesterday. So I might go over there and help him. I might grab my chainsaw and go over there and just help him cut that up.
Is that Ryan?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Big tree?
Fairly big.
That's
Looked like it was 1.5 to 2 feet in diameter.
that's a big tree.
It's just a branch from way up high. So it wasn't the whole tree, it's just a branch.
Yeah, that would kill you if it hit you.
Yeah. He's basically like, I was just mowing the lawn there like a half hour ago or something like that. So it was just like, whoa.
That is
kind of crazy.
trees are so heavy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think we realize that we are surrounded by 100-foot tall things that if they fell over could crush us instantly.
Yeah. Gravity, man. Gravity will take you out.
With
If
that
anything is above you, gravity will kick your butt.
Yep.
I think we so take that for granted. So take that for granted.
Cool. Well, cool. Sounds like a good day coming up.
Yeah. My third one is, let's see, more basement work. I want to do some mechanical duct work. So I have a duct run to make. I don't really know what you call it, but basically I've got to install a duct into 2 bedrooms.
Oh.
So that way they have AC, because right now they don't. So it's a little hot and sweaty in there. So that'll make those 2 rooms more comfortable. And then I've got to basically build a frame of box out around it so I can install and attach drywall on it.
Oh,
so
good. Ducks fly together.
they do. Ducts
Ducks.
fly together.
Are you going to use any duct tape?
I'm not actually.
Huh.
Duct tape is actually
Not for duct work?
well, it is that, but it actually fails catastrophically and quite miserably when it comes to actually sealing ducts. So it's great. You can do. I mean, I've seen books, man. There's like
You can
1,001
fix a car
things
with-
you can
yeah.
do with duct tape. There's all sorts of things, but the actual thing that it was created for,
It doesn't do very well.
no, it does horrible.
Huh.
Horrible. So you use a lot of things.
Interesting.
Like you can use
I
duct
never knew
tape
that.
for anything. Just don't use it to actually seal ducts,
Okay.
which is kind of,
Ducks. We're not talking about quack quack.
yeah, we're talking about DUCT.
Yeah, we're talking about
DUCK.
whoosh whoosh.
Whoosh, the air.
Yeah. Cool, man.
So
Learning something new about duct work every single day.
yeah, absolutely. Go
Cool.
for you, man. What were your daily 3 from yesterday, and what did you learn?
My daily 3 from yesterday was to work on the website. It was specifically to write the media queries for my CSS style sheets for the typography for my website. Didn't touch it.
All right, come on.
And second one was to work on the gospel commentary on the Gospel of John. Didn't touch it.
Uh-huh.
And the third one was to work on some coaching stuff. Didn't touch that.
Nice. You failed.
Miserably.
But let's talk about strategic failure, because I remember about halfway through the day yesterday, your priority, we had a conversation about you had decided to do something else.
This is true.
So tell me about like what you decided to do instead of those things, and then like why you made that decision.
Yeah. So instead, and I didn't realize, again, the common theme of underestimating the time it will take to do something.
Story of my life.
Seriously. So I ended up, there was helping my dad with realty. We usually do that stuff on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
but the people that he usually like wants to contact or get in touch with to get things set up, they don't open till Monday. So it kind of is like a lag where it's like if I get stuff done on Saturday, it makes it hard for him to work with some of that stuff. So I basically switched Saturday for Thursday.
Okay. Little calendar swap.
A little calendar swap, basically. So I just focused on importing all of his contacts into his realty system and getting that all set up. And it was a pain in the butt. Not going to lie.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad. I think I have like 6 more I have to do, but that should be...
That's it?
Yeah.
Because you had like 180 some yesterday, if I remember right, when you started.
Well, those were like entering all the different notes and stuff like that. Like,
okay.
I think he has like, I don't know how many different contacts he has in there, but he has quite a bit. But those were just like the individual notes that he had that I needed to copy over. Oh, I'm so glad it's done. So glad it's done.
Good job, man.
So, yeah, and I don't know how intentional I made that switch. I think on a gut level I knew, but
it was something that was like causing you stress, and you just had to do it to get it out of the way.
Yeah, I think so. And the stress was more at myself of not. I think of the underestimation of time, thinking that it would just be able, and then also underestimation of time, and then also being unable to, I guess, make the technology do what I wanted it to do, to make it easier for me.
Yeah.
So frustrated at myself for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just, I think you realized that I was stressed.
Yep, for sure.
Mike,
I think it was the same thing with, for me in the dental appointment, as far as like, it's just been something on my plate that's been nagging and annoying the crap out of me. And it's almost felt like this dead weight in the water that I'm just pulling, which is weird because it's really not a big task.
It's like a 15-minute phone call.
Yeah. But if you have a bunch of small things like that, sometimes like from a motivational or a standpoint of momentum, right? Because momentum is either forward or backward. You're not staying. You're always in motion. And so you're either moving forward and gaining more momentum, or you're losing it and slowing down. And so sometimes it can be good to just, that's ultimately why that task, which is just kind of a trivial task, right? But that's
just calling the dentist.
That's why it made it onto my daily 3, was because it's not getting done. And it's just like, I just need to do it to get it out of the way, because the mental energy and emotional and motivational energy that I expend on keeping this task out there undone is just like dead weight in the water.
So that's what made it move into the important category for you.
Yeah,
I guess of
it was important because from an emotional and motivational standpoint, it was just
nice.
It was a nag.
Yeah.
So I just had to do it. And then once I did it, it was like a small and quick, easy win. And I was like, sweet. Like, I'm already crossed one off my daily 3. What's next?
That's awesome. Yeah, I think what you're describing, like tasks that nag you, are in many ways like the life of an person who has ADHD.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Because I feel like that's because you're always forgetting to do things, and then you're always remembering later. And then when you remember it, it's like, oh yeah, I have to do that. Yeah. So it's
in that moment when that happens, is that very demotivating for you, or?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think I'm not a doctor. I have no psychology or any type of degree or anything like that. But from my own experience, I think that's why often people with ADHD will also have anxiety that comes about, or depression, because what comes from not being able to do the things they set out to do. And so that's discouraging, or that causes stress or anxiety. So oftentimes people who have anxiety or depression, that's not the root cause. The root cause is actually this inability in their brain to
make things happen.
To actually do things, and to keep that, to use their brain in such a way to make things happen.
Right. I know we've talked about this. I don't know if we've talked about this on the show yet, but
it's a show now, folks.
Show, podcast, whatever you're going to episode, series. What other names could we come up with for it? But anyway, so this idea that with ADHD, it's not a knowledge deficit.
No.
It's a executive or executing deficit.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is really hard for people to understand because we only think, I mean, everything in our life has been, especially in the West, and
in school,
it's all about knowledge. Mm-hmm. If you just know it, then you can do it. But for someone with ADHD, they know it, they just can't do it.
Right.
And that's just, and all that's coming into my mind right now is that meme of Jackie Chan going, "No!" Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
I'll put it in the show notes.
But the face you just made was funny enough where I think I get the
Yeah, I'm just like, "Oh, like what? Like what do you mean? How can you have like a doing problem?"
Yeah.
But that's what it is.
Right. So it's what I'm learning is like in our friendship is it's not helpful for you or for me, because I'm just going to get more frustrated, to basically like,
oh, this is a huge tip, folks. Listen in.
To like look at you and say, and just like lecture you.
Right.
And remind you, here's what you need to do. Or if you just do this, or if you only knew this. So if I explain it to you, then you'll be able to make it happen. Mm-hmm. That is not helpful for you at all.
That's not, no, because I know.
Right. You already know.
I already know.
The problem isn't with knowing, it's with actually executing
it.
Yeah, executing upon that knowledge.
Yeah, Dr. Charles, no, I don't think his name is Charles. That's the basketball player, Charles Barkley. But there is a psychiatrist, Dr. Barkley. He's written over 100 articles in scientific and like medical journals. And so it's like he studied ADHDs on the forefront, and that's what he'll talk about that. He has some great videos online where he says like, it's not a knowledge problem. They know what to do. People with ADHD, it's just like, you just end up frustrating yourself and them.
And I see how that can be very discouraging to you as well, when a lot of people assume that it's a knowledge problem. So then they do like almost lecture you or scold you or sometimes even shame you, and just like, well, if you just like, dude, here's how you do it, right? And they sort of speak down to you. Or that can feel, I'm sure, very belittling, as it's like, you're like, I already know these things. Like, it's not what I'm struggling with.
Yeah. You learn definitely if you have ADHD, you definitely learn to just to kind of like, you learn that the quickest way out of that situation is just to listen. So you can be done.
Yeah.
With it. Because it's like, because if you like argue, you know, because people don't have a category for like a doing problem. They don't know they don't have a good grasp of what does that look like, and then how do you solve it? Because usually the problem comes down to like knowledge, like, okay, this is broken. How do we fix it? Oh, you must need to have the right tools. Let's get you a planner, or let's get you the right, let's get like, let me give you a productivity book, or let me give you actually an ADHD book. And those all sound like, but so wouldn't that help? No, because I can have the planner, or I can read the book, or I can read the productivity book, and all of that knowledge will stay in my head. Mm-hmm. But in the words of Dr. Barkley, but it will have no controlling influence in my life when I leave that book, or when I leave, like, it will have no controlling influence in my life.
Sure.
So I know what to do, but it doesn't actually affect in many ways what I'm doing. And that's why we've talked about before, like the solution has to be like in the environment where I work. Mm-hmm. It has to be external from me, because the problem is me. And the problem isn't lack of knowledge. The problem is lack of doing. And
what have been some helpful things as far as actually helping you to do things?
Yeah. So, and I know I just said like a planner didn't work. I guess I meant like the idea of a planner. A planner also doesn't work if I don't bring it with me. But if I do bring something with me, and have something like visually in front of me, that helps. I need to remember though but like a planner, a physical planner is better for me than a planner on my phone, because there's a billion other apps on my phone, and if when I don't have that app open, it's not in front of me. So it's like
Sure.
it's like a planner in some ways is an app that's always open.
Yeah. Yeah. If you like an actual physical planner,
Yeah.
Right.
So that has helped when I'm working on.
it's like having a dedicated phone where the only app on that phone is your planner app.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
We made phones into paper again, folks. The other thing that's helpful for me personally that has been helpful is, sounds stupid, but I put Post-it notes on my computer sometimes when I need to focus on something, and it will just like have the task of what I should be accomplishing.
Yeah.
And that is so when I'm on my computer and I glance over, and you might think this is foolish, but in less than a minute, my mind will forget what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until I look at the Post-it note and I'm like, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be doing that. And you might think, in less than a minute, you can forget what you're supposed to be doing? Yes, that's like ADHD. I'm being, it's not a lack of attention, even though it's attention deficit disorder. Mm-hmm. It's actually having lack of self-control with that attention. And so the attention is constantly being given to other things. And so, so in less than a minute, and in less than that, probably like less than, I've definitely sat at my, I've definitely timed myself, and I've sat at my desk and tried to be like, okay, I am going to be aware of the next time I start thinking about something else. Mm-hmm. And I realized we all like it's hard to be aware of when we shift thinking.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's hard to know when you're lost. You don't know until you're lost.
Yeah. You don't know the point. All of a sudden, you know, oh, I'm lost, and I've probably been lost for a while.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of like when all of a sudden it's like, that's kind of what it's like with ADHD with tasks, except like on a minute level.
Yeah.
And in less than like 30-second intervals. So, and if you can imagine being like, if you're on that trip and you're being lost, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm lost. And then you start driving again. And then you realize, oh no, I'm lost again. And then you're driving again and you're like, oh no, I'm lost again. And then you're driving again and oh no, I'm lost again. That's kind of what it's like trying to work on a task with ADHD, because you're like, okay, I'm working on this. Okay, for some reason, I'm researching platypuses on Wikipedia. Okay, let's focus back on doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then it's like, oh no, now I'm learning about, and whatever. That was the first thing that came to my mind. But like now I'm working on like another project, or I'm working on another job, and oh, hey, that's right, I'm supposed to be doing this email. Okay. Oh, now I'm writing a paper. And so that's why this happened. Yeah, exactly. And so, because it's, the executive function in the prefrontal cortex, like it is not, I don't know if it has like dopamine that's being lost that causes neurons to fire or different things. And so it's like, and if you listen to this and be like, well, that wouldn't sound frustrating. Yeah, it's super frustrating. Yeah. So that's why sometimes a Post-it note is very helpful, because I'm like, okay, what am I? Oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be doing that. And the visual, like external in my physical space, that it's a way to like put it outside of me. And so when I see it, then I'm reminded. The thing is, though, I have to remember to actually set that up. So like visual cues, I remember when I was, every time I would get in the car, I'd be like, oh, that's right, I want to put a Post-it note in my car to remind myself to use my speed limit, or
cruise control.
Use my cruise control. And then every time I left the car, I completely forgot about it until I'd get back in the car and I'd be like, dang it, oh, I was going to do this. Right. Until finally you just handed me a Post-it note that said, here, put this in your car. And it said, David, or like you just gave me a Post-it note to use.
Yeah. I said, here's a Post-it note. Right on it.
Yeah. And you made me do it right then.
Yep.
And now it's still in my car. And literally it's because of that Post-it note that I remember to use cruise control. And I don't get tickets because I don't speed. Good. Because I'm like aware, because I'm not usually as aware of my speedometer. And that's why ADHD is like, I've been trying to train myself, like people with ADHD are not the best drivers because we can get so distracted. So to my shame, this is why I have watched TV shows as I drive, or or movies or read as I drive or any other things, like,
Sure.
because I'm like, this is so boring. What else can I be doing that's endangering the lives of everyone around me? I don't think of that. Oh boy.
Yeah.
It was like in stop and go traffic, so
Sure.
and I never got into an accident at all.
And I know another thing that you've mentioned before is that one of the struggles with ADHD is the consequences that are not immediate.
Yes.
You are almost not aware of,
Yeah.
in a sense. And I think we talked about that in the context of like finances and budgeting, but of like, oh, like the idea of probably like opportunity cost of, say, I don't know, $10, right? For future David 3 months from now, that it's hard for you to think of $10 in the context of future David.
Oh, it's not even on my mind. I mean, it's
Right.
it's in Mars. That thought is on Mars. It is so far away from me. all I'm thinking about right then is $10.
Yeah.
So people with ADHD are often like, have poor finances because they don't think of the future. They can't.
Right.
Unless there's something physically in front of them.
Right. Unless you've done that, and we've mentioned this now, but even in other episodes too, have done the work of figuring out how do we make the prefrontal cortex, that part of our mind and functioning of our mind, outside of our brain, and make it like visual in your environment. So setting up that type of like financial system. Yeah.
And so like that's why the best money saving technique for me is like to leave my card at home if I go somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I won't remember that I don't have my card until I pull it out and I'm like, oh, that's right, I left it at home, so I wouldn't spend money. Well, looks like I'm gonna take these things back in the store and not buy anything or something like that. Like that has happened to me before, which is mind-boggling to some people. But
yeah,
and also, yeah, so or just putting something like on your debit card or on your credit card to like remind yourself of your goals. Otherwise,
like literally get out a Sharpie and write on it.
Yeah,
something.
Yeah. Like, hey, you're trying to save money, or hey, you have an emergency fund you're trying to save up, or So it's a different type of thing to think through, and it's frustrating for the person who has ADHD and for all of those people around them who don't understand it as much and who just think. And so often it becomes, sadly, something of like, it must just be their motivation or they're lazy, or when often people with ADHD are actually trying very hard.
Right.
But they just, because it's a doing problem, nothing gets done. Or lots of stuff gets done, but just not the right things gets done. So, we're running around in the forest cutting down trees when we're supposed to be like working on the road. Right. We're doing a lot of different things. A lot of trees are getting cut down.
Right.
But
what's happening?
But the road is not being paved, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. So
right.
So I made that switch. So I don't even know how we got here in this conversation right now.
This is good. I mean, this is really good to think about, right? Because this is something I think that as we're talking about work and making things happen, getting things done, and we're thinking about like what's going to get in the way of that, right? And I think for you and I, this is really good, right? Because you having ADHD are going to bring a perspective and a struggle to this that is different, but is also very relatable, because there is a sense even in which like
absolutely
of hearing you describe some of these things, I do not maybe get frustrated or to the same degree that you do, because it's not, but there's still times where I'm like, oh, I know what that's like.
Absolutely.
I've similarly had times where it's like, shoot, I just wasn't even paying attention to this, or wasn't reminded of this, or right. Like sometimes it's like, I feel like I have a doing problem as well. Right? So to some degree, I think we all do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no one would disagree with that.
Is the way that it's amplified, right?
It is.
And so it's like, I think as we talk about work and how the gospel affects work, and what work is, and why God created it, why God gave it to us, and what it's for, I think this is, it's an important part of the conversation.
Yeah. And it's definitely a unique skill. Usually people with ADHD will make great managers because they aren't they forget about everything that they're supposed to be concerned about and are more probably focused on the people, unless they have a good system of checklists that are external and things like that.
Right.
If you try to manage someone with ADHD and you don't realize it, you're probably banging your head against the wall right now.
It's just being frustrated out of all of it.
Absolutely, because you don't understand. You just think they're a terrible worker, and they're not. Actually, you're a terrible manager because you haven't figured out how to take responsibility for the people that you've been entrusted with.
Yeah.
Harsh words, but
Yeah.
that's actually very freeing words because it gives you control and it figures out. That's what I was trying to do there. Like,
if you have this paradigm of constantly looking at the other person, whether they have ADHD or not, just any other person, and saying the problem is theirs, it's their fault, it's their issue, that is not an empowering viewpoint.
Then just throw up your hands and walk away.
Yeah, because in that situation, you have no control. Rather, like what it looks like to take ownership of that situation as a manager or as a boss or whatever, in a position of leadership, is to go, okay, if this person is struggling with that, then whatever it is, you look and say, okay, it must have been that I didn't communicate it clearly enough.
Exactly.
So how can I make this more clear? Or it must have been that I didn't give them the resources that they needed. What question can I ask to figure out what resources they do need, right? And so that puts the ball back in your court as far as like having control over the outcome, rather than basically giving up control in the sense of like unempowerment, and which often leads to like bitterness towards that person
or resentment.
Bitterness and resentment.
And yeah, it's taking ownership of the situation. And you might think like, okay, well then how do I help someone with ADHD? You manage, like, here are some tips. Like, and I've learned this from Dr. Barkley, is you want to make the consequences shorter in their lives, because they aren't able to like see those long-term. If they're working on a project, they have like their steps have to be broken up into smaller steps.
Yeah.
They have to have consequences for doing those smaller steps. And I don't mean consequences in a negative sense. I just mean they have to see that if they did this is the result, that they've done something.
Consequences, either negative or positive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the annual review
is pointless to the ADHD.
Even the semi-annual, quarterly, or even monthly.
Yeah.
You probably need more of like a weekly, if not daily.
Have a daily. Yeah. I mean, how, to have a conversation and people will be like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. And I will say, as I move the mic away from me, that's your job as a leader. Like, that is what makes leadership a high calling. It's you're in leadership, you are there to serve the people who've been entrusted to you.
Absolutely.
And you have to take responsibility and figure out a way. And so, yeah, that might actually require some work. Actually requires a lot of work to be a leader, to be a manager of someone, to figure out like, how can I enable this person to flourish under my management.
Yeah. Whether that, I think leadership is in the context of the church, or in the context as a boss or a manager, or even in parenting as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, oh, maybe you have a daily 3 conversation with them every morning.
Yeah.
And then throughout the day, go over and say,
here.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So we're doing it live.
We're doing it live. And then go over to their desk 3 times a day and be like, hey, how's it going on this? How's it going on this? How's it going on this? And you're like, wow, I have to go. It's going to feel like micromanaging. Maybe, but you can, I mean, there's different ways in your manner and in how you approach. And
I think this is, so here's a mutual friend we have, Chimieleski, says that manner and matter.
Yeah.
And so,
we can link to their podcast. We'll link to that episode of where Drew interviews him.
We should do that. There's some good stuff in that. Really good stuff in that. But so the other thing is, is it's not just the matter of what you're doing, right? So the actual like checking in, hey, how's your daily 3 going, or what's going on, right? It's the way in which you do it. Because I'm sure you've experienced the manner or the way in which someone comes and checks in with you that feels belittling, that probably feels like you are being micromanaged, versus there's a way that someone can do that where you feel like they're taking an interest in you, like they are on your side and they want you to get your stuff done for your own sake, not for theirs, and that you actually feel heard, listened to, and empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a difference there. And part of that is, I think, part of that is the ownership that we talked about, where if you're coming to them with the attitude of, okay, what's your problem and how can I fix it? Versus coming to them with it saying, hey, like, how can I help you? Or how can I serve you?
Yeah. What do you need from me?
Yeah. And like, how can I help you succeed? Because I want you to succeed. And coming, if you come to someone and they say, and after they've failed and say, hey man, this is all on me. I don't hold you responsible, for your failure because I've done something or I need to work on something. That's pretty extreme, but man, you aren't going to make them feel micromanaged there. You aren't going to make them feel like, wow, he's coming down hard on me and thinks I'm the fault. Like if you're constantly taking fault, you will win that person over and taking responsibility or constantly taking responsibility. That's what I meant, not fault. You will win that person over to you because they realize, oh, he's actually like, and here we go. He's actually being, people aren't going to realize this, but he's being Christ-like. And that is in a sense, an echo of the gospel is of where you are taking their faults upon yourself. You're kind of like what Christ did to us when he took our sin upon himself. Like he took our faults and our failures. You can go and do that to your worker and say, my fault, I failed. So I need to figure out a way how I can help you. I need to figure out a way what I can do so that we succeed.
Yeah. And I think that it was episode 3 that we talked about this, of the difference between like failure cultures.
Yeah.
So the difference between a fear-based failure culture versus a innovation or grace-based failure culture. So
yeah, and you don't have to do it perfectly. Grace abounds for you as well.
Right? You won't. Like this, we're all going to struggle to try to do that.
Yeah,
but it's very counterintuitive, right? Because there is this probably this sense of injustice.
And
in terms of like people saying, no, they should own their crap. And
they should. Right? And did they fail? Absolutely they failed. Yes.
Yeah. And in terms of what's been helpful for me as I've thought about this is a leader and a manager is thinking through the difference between like the way I've categorized it, and I realize this is semantics, but fault and responsibility. So like, and my pattern comes from Christ, right? In that when I think about the church, is it Jesus's fault that the church sins? Yes or no, right?
No.
It's not his fault, right?
Yeah.
But does Jesus take responsibility for the church's sin?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? And so it's realizing that it's like, okay, this may not be like my fault in that I was the direct cause of it, but regardless of whether or not it was my fault, it still is my responsibility.
Oh, that's super good distinction.
The question of like blaming someone is irrelevant.
That's a question of fault.
Right. It's absolutely irrelevant for the leader, for the manager who's trying to manage and lead like Christ. Because the question is, but is it your responsibility? Like fault, it doesn't matter, right? Like,
and you might say, no, but it does matter. And no.
Yeah, you don't.
Because if they realize it's their fault, that doesn't change anything. And I think that's the thing that we think, like, oh, if people would just know that it's their fault.
Right. That people know. People know when they have failed.
Yeah.
People know when they screw up.
There's a couple times where people don't and they're unaware.
Yeah. But for the most part, you don't need to tell them. You don't need to remind them, because they're often, especially if they've come out of a fear-based culture, a fear of failure-based culture that we've talked about, they already know. And they already have so much shame and so much guilt, and they know.
I saw a manager did this really well once when I worked at Wells Fargo, and we were in a group email chain going on, or it was a group chat, one of these two.
Those can get messy.
Oh my gosh. And someone screwed up doing something. I worked in home mortgage, and some loan got dropped somehow, and something didn't get, and the majority of the group was like, I think trying to figure out like, okay, yeah, but whose fault was it? Like, okay. And they, because that's what happens. And if you're in corporate, everyone's trying to like CYA, cover your butts and point fingers at someone else. And it's all about fault. And the manager then was just like, look, what's important is like, what do we have to do now? Like, okay, like I don't really care. She basically said, she was like, I don't care what happened. Like the question is now, what do we have to do? And I was blown away that she wasn't like trying to take the spotlight in the search yard to like focus on the person who did it, but was more.
She wasn't going on a witch hunt.
No. You know, she wasn't trying to single anyone out. But she took responsibility and said, okay, well, what do we have to do now to help this customer? And she like turned to focus on what was actually important. And it was I'll never forget that. I was like, wow. Oh,
because
this is super refreshing.
Yeah. Because in that situation, I love this story. Because finding out whose fault it was would not solve the problem.
No, that wasn't the problem.
It's more of like this emotional closure need that we feel entitled to figure out whose fault it was, because we need someone to blame,
right?
Because we're looking for a scapegoat.
And
instead, she surrendered that and gave up that sense of entitlement to that information, right? And said instead, how do we actually, like, this did happen. That's the reality.
Yeah, she acknowledged it.
So let's fix it, rather than like find out whose fault it was.
Yeah, totally. And you might, and that irks against, I think, our sense of injustice, because they're like, yes, but someone has to pay.
Right.
And
whether that payment is emotional or even social or just like verbal of, I need to verbally explain to you.
I need to tell you that you did it. Like, it was your fault.
Right.
Not mine. Okay. So everyone knows.
Yeah.
Or something. And you're like, so you're telling me I have to give up finding out whose fault it was? And it's like, congratulations, you've just discovered what forgiveness is. It's like, yes, someone was at fault, and you get to say, and you don't owe me that anymore. So now let's focus on something else. It's like, of course there's injustice,
right?
But of course there was injustice, you know, with you, before God.
Certainly.
But Jesus didn't come and say it's your fault.
Right.
He came and said, you don't owe me that anymore.
And I think
I take responsibility.
As far as our posture and our attitude, this is very practically what it looks like to be imitators of Christ. Right? Because we are essentially...
You said posture and attitude?
Yeah, in our posture and our attitude.
Yeah.
But essentially it comes out very practically in how we live and how we engage with others. But this is how we imitate, right? This is what it means to be a follower. Meaning, this is what Jesus has done to us. We then do that to others.
Right.
And so we are simply, that's all we're doing, is thinking through, how do we apply that?
Even in our jobs, even when we manage, even when we, work, and all the time. And sometimes it might be flip-flop. You know, sometimes maybe the injustice is that you are in a performance-based culture where a manager is constantly trying to seek out whose fault it was, because they're scared and they have a need to feel, you know, like they're in control and not.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you are constantly forgiving them and being like, okay. And sometimes it's you stepping up and being a leader and taking responsibility for other people's faults, even if you aren't the manager, even if they're just teammates.
And I think for that manager, the potential is incredible. And what I mean by that is, as far as like the opportunity they have to create culture and create a good culture.
Oh man.
Because this is something I've noticed at teams I've led, if you have someone who's going to like bring the haymakers on you if something doesn't happen, the temptation then is to bring it on your team.
Absolutely.
Right? And throw them under the bus so you don't get thrown under the bus. If instead what you do is you protect your team, and you always are the one who essentially, and this is where I get this right, Jesus, the idea of being an intercessor means you stand in the gap, you take the blow, you are dealt the punishment, even if it was rightfully someone else's. Right. And you don't do that in a manipulative way, but you just say, yeah, that was, so if you
take the responsibility.
If you work for, like, if you are a manager who does that, your team will always feel like you have their back. And so they will be so willing to take risks for you. And that will create a sense of loyalty. And it doesn't happen overnight, right? But over the long haul, as you develop a track record of, I am going to intercede and take, the heat from the owner of the company, or whatever it is, whoever it is who's coming at you in that sense. And your team knows that, and they feel protected, and they feel like you are, it creates a deep team dynamic that is incredibly fruitful from a cultural
creates
standpoint.
Trust.
Yeah.
They trust you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
trust.
Man, I keep on thinking of 3 books. If you want to learn more about ADHD, great books are one is Being Delivered from Distraction. And there's another one that talks about discovering it, and it's by the same people. It was written earlier, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Another idea that we're talking about is a book called Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Kind of we talked about, I don't know, I haven't read it. Mike has, and it's good. I've read the Spark Notes version. And
sure.
basically kind of the idea of just taking ownership for things.
Yeah. Basically, the basic idea is you need to own everything in your world.
Yeah.
Everything. Whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your friendships, relationships, family, work.
Own it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when you abdicate responsibility, like when you give that up and you blame someone else, well, then you just curl up in a fetal ball and a fetal position and cry because you have no responsibility left to do anything in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one is a simple story about leadership. I think that's what it's called. There's a simple story about servant leadership. And it kind of talks about what we're talking about. And it's it's the best business book I've ever read on leadership. And it's like a parable kind of in one of those formats, but he models it all after Christ. And that's the whole, and what you're talking about like him serving and him, it's just of what Christ did. And I think one of the reasons all the disciples trusted Christ so much, not only in a salvific sense, but just in a leadership sense, was because he was constantly serving them and was constantly like looking out for their best interest.
Yeah.
And sometimes that best interest was in the shape of Simon Peter, get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
It is written, like
a word of correction.
A word of correction. But he was constantly serving them for their best interest, and and that builds trust.
Certainly. Wow, that's good. What we have anything left as far as daily 3?
I don't know. My daily 3 for today are 1, I have a coaching appointment with a guy that I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. 2,
I have a meeting with my executive assistant just to work on some different things surrounding Grace Lead. And the third one is to work on the Grace Lead's website for getting those cascading style sheets with the media queries right for typography.
Awesome. Good job. Way to be specific on the website one, man.
Thank you.
That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
That is good because I think it shows you exactly what you need to work on rather than this giant monster of the website.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anyone's listening to this from my past work, I'm so sorry that you had to manage me while I had ADHD and I didn't have any sort of medicine or knowledge of it. I know how frustrating. And I am, I thank you for bearing with me. Yeah. That means I've had a lot of good bosses over the years.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Well, that puts another episode
in the books.
Daily 3 in the books.
Thanks for listening. Make it happen.
Make it happen.